So the anticipation, so I get to the hearing. I feel pretty confident. For the first time in my life, it was Joseph Martinez versus the state of Ohio. So that was the first time I was a plaintiff in a case. So I feel pretty confident.
You flip sides.
Yeah. Normally I was the defendant. For the first time in my life, I'm the plaintiff. So, I'm walking in feeling pretty good about myself. It is a pretty good feeling. And that's what recovery gives us. Recovery honestly gives us opportunities that not only what you set out to complete, but the ones that you never even imagined, way beyond any dream of what you thought you wanted to be when you grew up. It exceeds. I'm still every single day amazed, and I'm 5 years into my recovery now, and I'm surprised daily. I'm surprised daily.
I know Representative Gary Click, one of really the best in the country, of course in the state of Ohio, but across the nation. And yeah, absolutely.
And we're going to have Representative Click and Klopfenstein for sponsor testimony.
But there's no more local control than Bob and Betty Buckeye.
Well, that explains why he keeps saying, well, that's not the way Representative Click does it.
I'm not supposed to get emotional, but I am.
Then we sat down with Click to discuss his bill and the controversy surrounding it.
And the chair would like to invite Representative Click to present testimony.
The question is, shall the bill pass? The chair recognizes Representative Click.
Welcome back to What's Clickin' with State Representative Gary Click. I'm Janae Myers, his legislative aide. Today, we are hearing an incredible story of how obstacles have become opportunities for a certain constituent of Representative Click's. Representative, do you want to give us some opening thoughts?
Well, that's one of my themes in life is turning obstacles into opportunities and realizing that problems are possibilities. And Joe Martinez in our district is a young man who just actually proves that and has put that in real life focus. He was in the House recently, actually in the Senate, to testify on House Bill 268, which involves the Certificate of Qualified Employment. And we talked about that a little bit, but because he's the first person I ever heard about that from. I didn't know what it was until he was applying for one and had some just some obstacles in getting that. Those obstacles led him in a different path, so he actually did not get the CQE. I'm not going to give it all away. We'll talk about that. We'll let him tell his own story. But he's just a gentleman in our district who is doing some fantastic things, but his life started off kind of rough with addiction and substance abuse and so forth. And now he's turned his life around, and he is helping others who have the same struggles that he had once in life. So I wanted to feature him on the podcast today.
Well, I heard him give testimony in the Senate. He did an absolutely incredible job, so I'm sure he's going to crush this podcast as well. Let's jump into it.
Well, I am so glad to have with me today one of our constituents here in the 88th House District, right here in Sandusky County, Joseph Martinez. And Joe, we're talking today about how a CQE, or Certificate of Qualified Employment, can turn obstacles into opportunities. And the only reason that I even know what a CQE is because of you. And I met a young lady named Amanda at one of your good friends at Denny's. I was having a brunch, breakfast, lunch, whatever, at Denny's one day, and we just started talking. She told me her story of recovery. I told her about some the people in my own family that I know who have struggled with substance abuse disorder and so forth. And she said, "Hey, we're going to be at the farmers market in Fremont. We're going to have a tent. Would you come meet all my friends?" And I made her a promise. I kept that promise. You were there in that tent. I actually took a selfie that day with you and her and a few other people from the group, and that actually is hanging on my wall in my office to remind me of one of the reasons why I'm there is to help average, everyday, ordinary people in our district. So Joseph, welcome to What's Clickin'.
Thank you, Representative Click. Thank you for inviting me, and I really do like your name for this podcast.
What's Clickin'? Yeah, it clicks, right?
It does.
So let's start off here, and before we get into the bill, and you came and testified on this not too long ago. I gave some proponent testimony, but before we talk about that, just let's dig into your life story a little bit, because I think knowing what you went through and how you've overcome can help a lot of people. So let's back up. You had issues in life, right?
I did. Um, Around the age of 16, um, started experimenting with marijuana, I would say, first. One thing led to another. What would become 16 years of drug abuse, in and out of jails, overdose. And in 2021, I finally decided, with my mother's motivation. She's always been my main supporter. Even during those dark times of kind of losing faith, my mom was right there with me. So in 2021, I started making phone calls, and they found a place out in Fremont, Ohio, Surest Path Recovery Center. Never heard of Fremont, Ohio, didn't know where it was at. I knew it was an hour and a half from home, and that kind of scared me a little bit. However, I made the choice to come out here. Went through treatment, graduated IOP, and then I started
Okay,
volunteering.
we had an acronym there. What does IOP mean?
Intensive outpatient programming. Intensive outpatient, and it definitely is intense. I would consider it to be more of college. So going from inpatient treatment to, basically stabilizing from substances, withdrawing emotionally, physically. You go to intensive outpatient, and honestly, it's more like it's going from like elementary to college in recovery education. And so I graduated that program and started
Okay,
volunteering.
let's put a bookmark there.
Okay.
So you started off with marijuana, but then you said you overdosed a few times. What other substances did you quote unquote graduate to?
Yeah. So stimulants ended up being my substance of choice, specifically methamphetamine and crack cocaine. And I was one of the methamphetamine users that said I would never overdose because that's not my drug of choice. However, as I'm sure you know, fentanyl is being introduced into everything these days, including marijuana. So one day I used what I thought was methamphetamine, and it had fentanyl in it, and I overdosed. So,
What was that
yeah.
experience like for you, Joe?
um, well, I would like to think that that was the time that actually stopped me and motivated me to go to treatment, but it wasn't. Um, right away, your first thought is, where can I get more to wake yourself up, is what you'll tell yourself. Make yourself feel better. But ultimately, that's just the amount of control the substances really have on you. But
What
that
kind of a toll did this take on your mother?
well, when she picked me up from where I was staying at, she she looked just as bad as I did. I remember the look on her face when I turned around and said goodbye to her, and she looked like she had been out there with me. And I know that because when she did come out here to visit me, I asked her, I said, "Well, Mom, what'd you do with your hair?" And she said, "I didn't do anything with my hair." I said, "Well, it looks really nice." She's like, "I sleep well at night now, Joe." Um, yeah, and that really stuck. It really stuck.
Wow, wow, that's great. So you were in substance abuse, you overdosed, and then you found Surest Path Recovery right here in Fremont, Ohio, and describe the intake, how you got in, what happened, and how that began to change your life.
So the intake is definitely the scariest part of the whole process, I think. See, it's not hard calling for help. It's not hard. It's a little harder walking in the door. It's a lot harder staying. It's very emotional. I describe my experience like the merry-go-round at Cedar Point, except it's going really, really fast. One day you're doing really well, loving life. The next day you can find nothing good about it. And everyone's withdrawal is going to be different, but I describe mine as very emotional. But I would say after those first 2 weeks, you start to get those good feelings back. You start to remember those dreams you had when you were a kid, what you wanted to do when you grew up. So it's a little motivating. Um, Mentally, I would say is probably the hardest challenge to sit with is the thoughts, the ruminating thoughts that just come in. The chemicals that we've been putting in our body, or at least I was for 16 years. In a matter of 35 days in inpatient treatment, you leave stable, but you need a lot more time than 35 days.
Yeah. So there's I say there's the chemical addiction, but then there's also the psychological addiction. And how do I deal with life without chemical assistance?
There is. And, and some of us, from speaking with my fellow peers that are in recovery, some of us, like myself, just kind of use to fit in with my peers, and then led into something else, where some use to escape, to avoid and or mask feelings. Everyone uses for different reasons, but ultimately, the interesting part about addiction, is it does not discriminate, and that in a room full of individuals in an intensive outpatient program, you have different walks of life from different areas, different socioeconomic levels, different cultures, but yet we're all in the same room.
Right.
We're all in the
Yeah, it
same
doesn't
room.
matter what
Doesn't
your
matter.
race or your ethnicity is. Doesn't matter if you're rich or if you're poor.
Does not.
Addiction can consume you, can it?
It sure can.
So you get through those first stages, you get detoxed, and then what's next in your life?
What's next is typically someone that works there will come to you and say, "Hey, have you put any plans into what you'll do next?" And I'm like, "Well, I really haven't thought of that." Well, we have this thing called IOP. I never heard of same thing you said. What's IOP? They tell me it sounds good, but right away I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll just go back home. The realization of what do you have to go home to? So for me, it was making a decision and sticking with it. And that's what I tell everyone I work with is it's an easy program, but people are complicated and we like to complicate things. So we can
I
take
like
it.
the way you put that. The
Yeah,
program's easy. People are what's complicated.
yeah, yeah. So we'll complicate it, right? We'll blow it out of proportion. We'll overthink. We'll catastrophize things. We'll run off of our emotions, which is typically what's driving us. So I think once you can get your emotions in check, you can start changing the way you think about things. The way you think about things starts to change. Therefore, your perception of the world, what's around you, starts to change. And then I think you actually start to get that internal motivation, which I call the fire inside is the internal motivation. Because we can have all these external factors. You can have your mom rooting you on. You could have, the need for getting your kids back. However, you're never gonna at least I can't say never because it's everyone's different. But when you have that internal motivation, if any of those external factors should disappear, you're gonna keep yourself. But the man upstairs, you can't do this alone. Can't do it.
So you get through that, and you go through there for a while, but you stuck around. You're still here. Why are you still here? What transpired next for you after overcoming your addictions? Why did you stay in Fremont?
It's a great question. So I started volunteering a little bit here and there. To back back up a little bit, when in 2006, before substances really took over my life, I went to nursing school. I wanted to help individuals. So I started volunteering at the treatment center. You start getting the feel good feelings of seeing other individuals coming in for the first time. It also keeps you humble, and there's a sense of peace. I can't describe it. You would have to experience it. But the sense of peace that I gained out here in this community, I mean, individuals like yourself coming up, I met you at that event downtown Fremont, had no idea who you were. You came over, you started talking with me, And then you told me you're a state representative. And I was like, wow, it blew my mind away that someone, of your position would just stop, talk to me like any other person. You told me you worked for me.
That's right, I do.
But I'll give you an example. Yesterday at Denny's, I was up there and this older gentleman was sitting across from me, and this dessert pops over to my table, and it was from the gentleman in the booth over. And being born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, not to say those acts don't happen, but this community is like none other. So that sense of peace and community and being embraced by the entire community, I wouldn't want to go anywhere else.
Fremont is a great place.
Home to me.
And so now you talk to me about your transition from being helped to helping others.
Well, I took a long shot. I applied for the job. Typically, most places will not, especially that early in recovery, let alone your background check, give you the opportunity. However, I was granted that opportunity, and I rolled with it. I slowly leveled up my education, became a certified peer supporter, and
Now,
then
what does it take to become a certified peer supporter?
so to become an Ohio certified peer recovery supporter, you need to have lived experience, meaning you yourself have experienced substance use or mental health disorders. You have to do some online and virtual and in-person courses. So it's really set out by the Department of Behavioral Health. You go through some rigorous training such as human trafficking, person-centered treatment, trauma-informed care. They really teach you how to work with individuals that are experiencing trauma and crisis. And then you finally go for your formal training, which is 40 hours. And then once you're completed, you can apply with the Department of Behavioral Health for that licensure.
That's terrific. That's terrific. And then you went on further than that, didn't you?
I did.
Tell me about it.
So I really reflected on life, and I think when I got out here to Fremont, I was 37 years old. So about this time, I'm 39. You start having those, like, am I too old to do anything new with my life? And finally getting over that, so I decided I wanted to be a counselor. I found my purpose. I found what I really wanted to do in my life to actually help people. So I applied to be a counselor. But I was denied due to a prior offense, which was a drug possession charge. And once I got the denial, they actually give you recommendations like, hey, you can apply. It has to be 5 years from the date of your offense, or half time being 2.5 years, or you could follow these steps and apply for a CQE. I'm like, what is a CQE? I've never heard of a CQE. So I take those instructions. I find out it's a certificate of
qualified employment.
Qualified employment, right. So, just me being a man on a mission, I'm like, okay, go through the steps. Okay, I get this. I get letters of recommendation. I get as much information to provide to show that I'm rehabilitated. And I actually think in one of your previous episodes, and in your testimony yourself, it does not guarantee that you're going to receive one. But so those are the steps I took. File the motion with your common pleas court, and you wait your time for your hearing. So the anticipation, so I get to the hearing. I feel pretty confident. For the first time in my life, it was Joseph Martinez versus the state of Ohio. So that was the first time I was a plaintiff in a case. So I feel pretty confident.
You flip sides.
Yeah. Normally I was the defendant. For the first time in my life, I'm the plaintiff. So, I'm walking and feeling pretty good about myself. It is a pretty good feeling. And that's what recovery gives us. Recovery honestly gives us opportunities that not only what you set out to complete, but the ones that you never even imagined of, way beyond any dream of what you thought you wanted to be when you grew up, it exceeds. I'm still every single day amazed, and I'm 5 years into my recovery now, and I'm surprised daily. I'm surprised daily.
But the CQEs, I never heard of it till you, but I'm not the only one that hasn't heard of it. I know that in committee, when you testified about a week or so ago, many of the committee members said, this is the first time we've ever heard of this. And in fact, I think you were the first one in Sandusky County to apply for one. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah. Yeah. I
Which
think it's
means what?
which means,
And how did that work not in your favor?
well, yeah, in all fairness, which means that it wasn't known of, so there wasn't too much information to go by. And, I mean, we have to make decisions that affect the community, and,
Mhm.
everyone lives in that community. So my motion was denied. So I went ahead. But he was gracious and gave me the opportunity to go ahead and withdraw my motion, which I chose to do. So
Because he had not seen it before, because you were the first one. I mean, the revised code is
yeah,
huge. It's big.
it's
And
huge.
so it's not a surprise that maybe a judge, if it's never been applied for before, and it was not personal against you. It was just trying to figure out, give time to sort through this situation. And I've spoke to the judge since then about you, and he was grateful for that input and so forth. And I think if you had applied again, I think you would have probably been very successful in achieving it. But instead, you found a different route. And what was that route?
I did. And you know what? In all fairness, he did treat me very, very kindly, because just the act of allowing me to withdraw my petition so it wouldn't negatively impact me in the future speaks for itself. So what part of his advice actually was to possibly seek out consultation at Cuyahoga County. So what I did was I actually filed for an expungement, sealing of my record and all my civil rights back. And about 2 months later, after filing that motion, I'm on the computer checking every day, looking at the docket. Nothing's there. So finally, I was like, I'm gonna stop looking. Every day you're checking, it'll come if it comes, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. And then a week goes by. My mom called me. She's like, "Hey, have you heard anything yet?" And I was like, "No." And I look, and I couldn't find anything. I'm like, "Well, my computer's messed up, Mom. I can't find anything. It's not there. I think my computer's messed up." And sure enough, I received an email that my record was wiped clean. Yeah,
Wow, that's exciting.
very
That is
exciting.
good. So this is the title of the program today is how obstacles can turn into opportunities. And you face a lot of obstacles, but you've turned those into opportunities, and that allowed you, because without the CQE or the expungement, you couldn't technically be hired as a social worker. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. To become a counselor, to get any licensure, at least in the state of Ohio, I do believe, certain offenses disqualify you from receiving that. So mine tech really wasn't for employment, but however for professional licensure, which so. But if you think about it, had I received the CQE that day in the court,
Mm-hmm.
would I have sought out expungement later?
Right, right. So sometimes things don't look like they're in our favor, but if we have patience and persistence, even sometimes that bad news turns into good news and leads us down a farther path and a better path. And that's what happened for you.
Exactly, because setbacks are just that. You don't stay back. Setbacks to me are books that you find in schools. They're where we learn. They're where we grow, and we have to flip the page in order to move through it. So that's what I
And so
chose to do.
how do you spend your days now? What do you do on a daily basis?
So my days, I participate. So we teach. I am now a teacher of IOP. So we do group therapy sessions, 3
And
hours daily
where do you do this at?
at Behavioral Concepts of Ohio. I'm at our Clyde location. We have locations in Marion, Bucyrus, Fremont, and Northwood.
Very good.
So I do individual counseling sessions. We do group therapy, intensive outpatient therapy with families, individuals. And I'm a full-time student at Walden University pursuing my bachelor's social work degree. So
Amazing, amazing. So how does it feel for you when you get that sense that you're helping someone else to overcome what you overcame?
that's a great question because I'm not sure that I could put that into words. I can say that it's a very humbling job that's full of gratitude and fulfillment. Um, Seeing that spark in somebody's eyes, seeing that change in their behavior, seeing them get it and figuring it out for themselves, that's the reward. That is definitely a reward. I remember when I first got the job, after receiving my expungement and getting my CDCA, standing at the podium teaching IOP class, I looked out and I paused for a second because I was like, wow, I'm teaching IOP. Like, you went from a student to teacher to undergraduate student. Um, there are no limits. The limits are the limits we place on ourselves.
Right. And so I just know that's got to be just as you see when you look at these people who are struggling, do you see yourself in them?
I do. I do because some of us go through more challenges than others, and you can see some that are struggling, not seeing that light. And then you see some that just won't give up, but you know what's there on the other side. But you can't rob them of the experience either. They have to. You can only. I call myself the navigator. You're the driver. I'm the navigator in the passenger seat. You tell me where you want to go, and I'll help you get there.
Yeah. And I think that, somebody in your shoes, we're talking about peer support recovery. And there's a limitation. I mean, there's things I can say, things that I can do, and there's an amount of encouragement that I can give to people who are struggling. But there's something I think that people face when they're actually talking to someone who's been there, done that, and overcame. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely do. I believe that's what changed for me. Not only was it the community and the change of environment, but I had been to a couple different treatment centers in Cleveland. But I would say the program out here is much different. Sitting across from somebody that says they understand and you know that to be true, it gives you hope. Hope alone. It gives you hope and faith that there is a way forward. And that's just enough encouragement to keep going.
It's not theoretical, it's practical, it's real.
Practical. Yeah, I can see it. I'm watching it. Recovery works because I can see it. What proof do you have? You're looking at it.
Right. Right. It's not just idealistic fantasies, rainbows and unicorns. It's
not,
here I am. If I've done it, you can do it.
And the many that came before me and the many that will come after me, recovery is possible. It is.
It absolutely 100% is. And so you did, however, come, even though the CQE did not ultimately help you had to go around a different route. Why did you think it was important to come testify? Because our bill, HB 268, which is a bipartisan bill with Representative Latina Humphrey, a CQE right now, you cannot apply to 1 year after your latest sanction, which is community control, parole, some people used to call it. 1 year after that. Well, your sanctions can last up to 5 years. And so that means it could be 6 years before you can apply. Our legislation says that you can apply. And again, an application is not a guarantee that you receive it. You've got to bring the goods. But it says you can apply 1 year after your release rather than 1 year after your latest sanctions. So that could cut that time off by 5 years. Why is that a good bill?
That's significant. That's a good bill because if I'm 5 years into my recovery today, and had the law been different, that gives me an opportunity to show my worth, rehabilitate at my pace, right? But more so, barriers to people in recovery are the two main barriers are employment and housing. Okay, employment and housing. And if somebody is wanting to work and they're recovering, they're doing everything they need to do, and they can't get a job because of their record, that can be discouraging. It could lead to individuals relapsing, and going back, recidivizing back into what they know what to do, going back home. And furthermore, I believe that by amending this law, that more individuals will be able to use the CQE, which means it'll be used more and it'll be more familiar for other individuals. So in my case, how it was it was not heard of. Nobody was really using it. And it gives people the opportunity to give back to the community that we've taken from.
So it can
That
reduce that recidivism and speed people on their way to recovering from bad decisions that they made earlier in life. And people deserve a second chance, don't they?
They do. And one of the things about individuals in recovery is we often want to give back. There's a sense of I don't want to say guilt, but there's a sense of wanting to give back to
Gratitude.
make amends with ourselves, right? And we need that opportunity, but until we need somebody to give us that opportunity.
Wonderful. So we're going to wrap up here in a minute. Let's imagine somebody's watching the program today, and they're struggling. They're caught in addiction, and they want out, but they just don't know if they can do it. They don't know if there's any opportunities. They don't know if anybody really understands what they're going through. What is your message to that person watching this program today?
It's a great. I would tell that person that you're not alone. There are people out there that do understand. No matter what your story is, there is help out there. Uh, Individuals want to see you get well. Sometimes it takes professional intervention. So make the call, take the first step, and stay. Hope is everything, and that's what recovery offers you. Recovery gives you things that you're sitting there right now thinking about. Come and get it.
Mm-hmm. That's good. And so where you're at right now, you are at Behavioral Concepts of Ohio. And if someone wanted to reach out, how would they reach out?
So they can call 567-334-1989. And when you call, it'll give you a list of extensions for our many different offices. I can be located at extension 1010. I'd be glad to take an inquiry, sit there and talk with you, answer any of your questions, to make you feel more comfortable about the decision you're going to make.
All right, good. Can you give that number and your extension one more time, just in case someone didn't have a pen or a piece of paper, and so they don't got to rewind the program to get to it? Would you just say that real slowly one more time?
I can. So my number is 567-334-1989, extension 1010.
Terrific. And I hope that maybe somebody's out there who's contemplating getting help and will pick up the phone and make that phone call. And I know you'll be at the end of the line, and I trust you to help them. I'm so proud of you and what you have done with your life, Joe. I use you as an example all the time when I'm talking to people. And I was so thrilled to see you come down to Columbus and testify in support of this legislation that can help people in another way that kind of meshes with your own experiences in recovery supports. So thank you for joining What's Clickin' today. And I look forward to seeing you around the community here in Fremont.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your support, and go
Unfortunately, I have to cut that part out because this is an official podcast and we can't do campaigns. But I appreciate it, Joe.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, it was so good to hear Joe's story and to see how he has overcome the obstacles in his life, and how he's turned them into an incredible story of recovery. Representative, any closing thoughts?
Well, I'm just so pleased with Joe and what's happened in his life and how he keeps moving forward. And I thought that was really touching, how he described his mother in the podcast, and just how, because one of the things we got to remember is addiction affects more people than just the addict. Substance abuse affects more than just the person who's abusing the substances. And so the transformation that actually took place in his mother's life is actually profound, because what mother doesn't love her son or care about her son when they're going through those struggles? And so I thought that was amazing. And I think I like sharing these stories of success, because that just reminds us that no matter who you are and no matter where you are, there is an opportunity that can come out of those obstacles in life, but you have to take advantage of those opportunities. And Joe's an example of someone who's done that. So we want anyone out there. Joe gave the number. Rewind. We'll put it in the show notes as well. But if you're struggling, get a hold of Joe or find someone locally where you're at, and get some help. There's a lot of help out there for you.
All right. Well, again, it was incredible to hear Joe's story, and I'm sure the listeners enjoyed it as well. Thank you guys for tuning in to What's Clicking with State Representative Gary Click. You've been listening to What's Clickin', the official podcast of State Representative Gary Click, covering Ohio's 88th House District. That includes Seneca and Sandusky counties in Northwest Ohio. I'm Janae Myers, his legislative aide. If you would like to reach out to us, you can send us an email at rep88, that's REP88, at ohiohouse.gov, or you can give us a call at 614-466-1374. Thanks again for joining us for What's Clickin' with State Representative Gary Click. We'll be back again soon to let you know what's clickin' in Ohio.